Can you just give us a breakdown of what mitochondria is?
They are really the powerhouse. These are the batteries that keep the cell going. I think there are three pillars of keeping your mitochondria in top shape.
Maybe we jump in and start a company on that.
Resveratrol, it's found in this outer skin of the grapes.
Does that mean red wine is something we want to be drinking all the time?
You'll have to drink liters of very high quality red wine to get enough to give you a what I call a therapeutic benefit.
Sounds good.
Let's deconstruct the mitochondria.
Whether it's powering through workouts, recovering fast, or just feeling like the best version of yourself, your health starts at the cellular level. Check it out. I didn't even understand this, how important this is. And that's where Mitopure comes in. So Mitopure is no ordinary supplement. It's a precise dose of the rare postbiotic Urolithin A, scientifically proven supercharged to your mitochondria, aka the cell's powerhouses. So think of it as hitting a reset button on your cellular health, clearing out the old and making way for the new. 2025 is the new. So with regular, habitual use, you'll feel the difference in improved energy levels to tackle each day with confidence, stronger, more efficient workouts, faster recovery, so you can do it all over again tomorrow. And the science doesn't lie. Mitopure is the only supplement clinically proven to rejuvenate cellular health, delivering double-digit gains, muscle strength, and endurance, even without changing your exercise routine. Yeah, you heard it right. The science meeting performance. Check out timeline.com/David Nurse to grab your exclusive discount. That's timeline.com/David Nurse. Your supercharged cells, yeah, they're waiting for you. Best year starts today. Get it. Dr. Singh, welcome to the podcast. And you're an expert in mitochondria, and mitochondria is one of those optimization aspects that people like to throw around, but I don't think enough people actually know what mitochondria is and why it is the supercell. Like, people think about it as like, oh, is mitochondria Superman? Like, if I increase my mitochondria, I become Superman. Can you just give us a breakdown of what mitochondria is, and then we'll go much more in depth on how to optimize it, what gets in its way, and all that good stuff?
Sure. No, well, first, thanks for having me on the podcast, Dave. So let's deconstruct the mitochondria. So mitochondria are ancient bacteria, actually. Evolutionary, these were very similar to bacteria that kind of integrated with our cells and the genome of the cells. So mitochondria have their own specific DNAs, that's called mitochondrial DNA, and the whole reason during our evolution of why they integrated with the cells was they are really the powerhouse. These are the batteries that keep the cell going. And so it was in the benefit of us as hosts, back in the evolution, for our cells to kind of integrate with mitochondria, because they would provide the motor, they would provide the energy for the cells to go on. And the mitochondria, in turn, got all the nutrients, so whatever we were eating. So, you wouldn't exist today if the mitochondria were not integrated into our cellular sort of machinery. Just because you won't be able to get up, you won't be able to think clearly, you won't be able to walk or run. Think of your cell phone. When it's green, you can call everybody, you can use it as much your cell phone, but the moment it goes in the red, right, that's when you start getting scared. And that's exactly how mitochondria are during aging. We are in our 20s, 30s, the batteries are all green. And as we aging 40s, 50s, 60s and beyond, it starts to turn to red. And so that's what it is, basically. It's the powerhouse of the energy factories.
Okay, do we lose them? Do we gain them as we get older? Like, what happens to our mitochondria?
So they continue to do whatever they are supposed to do now, which is provide energy. Now, what happens with aging during the aging process is they get stressed, right? So you're not moving, or you're eating a lot of processed food, or leading a very sedentary lifestyle. These become stressors on these factories. And what that means is basically with the aging process, you get more damaged mitochondria. And so there's a constant process in our cells that keeps the healthy mitochondria, numbers, and the bad mitochondria, the unhappy mitochondria, in a sort of status quo or in a balance. And with aging, the balance just shifts towards more damaged, stressed out mitochondria. So think of them as zombie mitochondria, and the body just can't clear these damaged mitochondria out. And so the real estate in a cell is now all filled with, think of, bad trash in the cell, and the trash pickup van is not showing up. And so your house won't smell well. And it's the same in the cells. And so the aging process slows down this clearance. And what happens is basically your energy reserves start getting depleted.
So I think people want to know, and I know I want to know this, so I'm asking it, of what are the things that we can do on a daily basis? What are the things that we can eat? Let's start off with eating and drinking. So I know there was a study done by the Journal of Biological Chemistry, 2006, talking about resveratrol and mitochondria biogenesis. Resveratrol found in red wine, promoting the mitochondrial biogenesis. Does that mean red wine is something we want to be drinking all the time? Or like, should I be having that for breakfast with my coffee? Talk to me on what we can do to improve in terms of nutrition, eating, and drinking.
I think there are three pillars of keeping your mitochondria in top shape. One is obviously exercise, right? Exercise is the best supplement, intervention, whatever you want to label it, drug that boosts mitochondrial health. There are thousands of studies, clinical studies showing that. Then
let's go into nutrition, and then we're going to get to exercise.
Sure. Yeah.
And let's dial in the specifics on if I'm on a daily practice of optimizing my mitochondria. What does that look like?
So then you have to think about the three strategies on nutrition side, how you can boost mitochondria. One is what we biologists or clinicians call as mitochondrial biogenesis. Now, sounds like a nerdy word, but it just means growing newer, healthy mitochondria, right? And their nutrients, you mentioned one, resveratrol. It's found in this outer skin of the grapes. And it's found in traces in wine. So you'll have to drink liters of very high quality red wine to get enough to give you a what I call a therapeutic benefit. So
sounds good.
So of course, drinking a lot of wine will come with other side effects on your liver. So about 30 years back, they discovered resveratrol, and they started amplifying and giving it as supplements with the hope that you will boost more healthier mitochondria. Now, since then, there are other nutrients. There are these metabolites of the NAD pathways that we call NAD boosters. So there are things like nicotinamide riboside or nicotinamide mononucleotide, called usually in the field as NR and NMN. They do something very similar. They increase biogenesis. So that's one way to improve through nutrition. If you eat a lot of let's say if you drink wine or you drink milk has traces of these NAD boosters.
Okay, what kind of milk? Are you raw milk, or are we drinking pasteurized milk?
Yeah, I think that they are in very trace levels. Again, back to what I said with the wine, I think they're in raw milk, but if you'll have to drink like liters and liters to get enough exposure.
Okay, so it's best. You're not going to get much out of just nutrition alone. Is kind of what I'm picking up on.
Yeah, so that's why you need to supplement, right? You need direct, high calibrated supplementation strategies. So that's one way. The second nutritional way to do it is something called as mitochondrial efficiency. Now, what that means is you take your healthy pool of mitochondria and you make them function better. So you optimize the let's say the operation of your factories, which are producing energy. And there are nutrients, very good nutrients like coenzyme Q10, creatine, which is sold as creatine monohydrate, and something called L-carnitine. So, these are found, typically CoQ10 is a very essential part of the mitochondrial assembly. And people have given CoQ10 supplementation for many, many years. L-carnitine and creatine can also be found in food sources, but not enough that they will deliver health benefits, and that's why you need to supplement. The third strategy, which has never really been exploited, is something called as mitophagy. Now, you take your pool of bad mitochondria, you bring the garbage disposal truck to show up very regularly, and you keep cleaning the faulty, damaged mitochondria out, now your real estate is full, is clean enough that now these damaged mitochondria which are going to become building blocks of your healthier new mitochondria. That's how the recycling happens. And so we discovered long back with a professor here in the Swiss Institute of Technology a molecule called Urolithin A, which is basically a gut microbiome derived metabolite when you're eating pomegranates and nuts and berries. But not everybody can make this molecule, and we found that it was accelerating mitophagy. So these are the different ways how you can improve mitochondrial health.
Okay, well, let's dive into. Let's keep going on that path of supplementation. Can you go a little deeper into the PQQ, the CoQ10, NAD? What I guess if let's say we're going to put together this cocktail, right? Like, what is the supplementation cocktail to enhance mitochondria the most? And I also want to get into Mitopure, of what you guys have created at Timeline Nutrition, that from all the research, it looks like that it's a complete game changer. Strength is up 12% in these studies that you've done. Endurance is up 17%. I know energy is high as well. Let's go into the supplementation cocktail for mitochondria optimization.
Yeah, so for me, the cocktail would have a nutrient that is hitting all these three pathways, right? So we talked about mitophagy. So I think you have to clean out the waste before you can start building a good foundation. So I have a kind of a very sort of clinical centric view there. You need to figure out what's the problem. You clean out the waste, and so that's where Urolithin A or Mitopure comes in. And then I would add something like a Resveratrol or NAD booster that can then augment the creation of new healthier mitochondria. And then I would provide a fuel utilization like a CoQ10 or PQQ, as you mentioned, or even creatine monohydrate that will just keep the energy cycle, the production at a very optimized level. So for me, adding sort of a three cocktail of a mitophagy recycler like Urolithin A, a biogenesis booster like NAD, or resveratrol, and then a third would be creatine or CoQ10 that is making them more efficient. That's the sort of the perfect cocktail.
I like that. We can mix it in with our wine that we're drinking in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I have gone around the world studying folks who in different parts of the world, and I can tell you the Mediterranean diet has a mix of everything. People are
good point.
They're eating fermented food, so they're keeping the gut microbiome happy. So now it's more conducive to making postbiotics like Urolithin A. They are drinking enough wine and cheese and milk, and so they're getting exposed to resveratrol and other things. And then, typically they are eating fresh from the farm and getting exposed to things like CoQ10 and creatine or L-carnitine directly from these sources. So, yeah.
Well, I think that's really interesting, and I want to talk. So, just a quick question on NAD, and then I want to talk about what you just touched on, the travels around the world and what you have seen in different cultures. I think is very interesting. But NAD, does it have to be in drip? Do you have to NAD drip it? Can you take it in pill form? I've heard different conflicting stories on that. What do you think is the best way to get NAD?
So I would say that there's a 10 times higher body of evidence, scientific evidence on the oral forms, just because they're known to be safe. They know that let's say the bioavailability, the amount you can boost the NAD, and seems like you need to take, about 300 milligram to a gram of either nicotinamide riboside or NMN to boost, by twofold your NAD. NAD is this other key molecule that is needed for the energy production, which is the currency is ATP. So, and the IV, I know it's catching up. I know there are compounding pharmacies that are kind of where clinicians in the longevity space are giving it. I think there are a few unknowns as a clinical trialist. I would really like a long-term head-to-head comparison on the benefits and the safety profile. And yes, the whole idea, I get it, that if you do the IV, you bypass the sort of liver phase 2 metabolism and you get more higher exposure and you get the boost much faster. That would make sense. But again, I'm trained as a clinician. I would only do it where I see folks who have fatigue issues, right? Or really who are struggling with energy levels to kind of get a boost, but not with healthy Joes, who are already exercising, eating well. To me, at least until I see the data, it does not make much sense. And I would say take the oral.
Yeah, that makes sense. Totally makes sense. So talk to me on you're very well traveled. I mean, you're in Switzerland right now. I know you've been all over the place. What have you seen in these different cultures that you have integrated yourself into? So, like what is, why do they have more health? Why are they more mitochondria? Why do they have better longevity? Now, I think the blue zones are kind of a little overplayed.
Yeah.
I've been everywhere, pretty much every continent, and I don't, they always talk about Okinawa. I used to consult for the Okinawa basketball league team in Japan. And I don't know. I think that's kind of just an overplayed marketing tool in some capacity. What have you seen in terms of these different cultures that you've been in that really stand out to you?
I tend to agree. Listen, one of the first studies, and I will never forget this study, it was actually in a Dutch population of 75-year-olds I did. And the way I was studying at the time, why do Dutch people have such a robust sort of vitality and physical function? And yes, we know. I mean, everybody has this image of almost every Dutch person on a bicycle going further and further away, and but actually, when you compare a 75-year-old in this Dutch population, and you take what we do is we take small pieces of skeletal muscle from their quadriceps, and we study it, really a deep biological molecular approach. And you study them to a 70-year-old in the US age match cohort that is very sedentary. Everything that lights up that is looking good in the physically active Dutch population is linked to mitochondria health being improved, and everything that is looking like it's really out of order, in the age match 75-year-old, let's say American sedentary population of the same age, it's that their mitochondria are really damaged and in very poor condition. So, so what I have seen from my trialistic, and I've done almost 50 plus randomized trials now in my career, that physical activity is absolutely. I've done a lot of high protein supplementation in older adults and healthy adults too. Unless you put the element of exercise, you really don't amplify the effect even of things like high protein supplementation. So in cultures where they're eating a lot of high protein straight from the farm, things like goat cheese or things a lot of dairy products, you see the impact, and they're traveling long distances around in the pastures. That's part of the mythology of the blue zones as well, that they eat fresh food and they travel a long distance to get their food. And I mean, obviously you're doing activity and you're getting fresh food. So the third is, what is really fascinating is the drastic change in gut microbiome across the different world populations. And I think that is one of the key hallmarks, biological hallmarks we can exploit to improve how we age. And going from India, where I come from, and I've been studying who makes this gut microbial metabolite or postbiotic called urolithin A. When I look at the Indian population, and I'm one of them, so there is only about a 5% population that has the right gut microbiome to make these healthy gut postbiotics. And I think it's a lot to do with the practice of giving antibiotics early in life, okay? And antibiotics for everything. So you're not only taking out the bad guys, you're actually taking out the good bugs in your gut. And so that's one. Now, if you go to Japan or Korea or cultures where there's a lot of emphasis on eating fermented foods, the gut microbiome is like a polypharmacy. I mean, it's producing a whole range of metabolites and compounds that are beneficial to us as hosts. And then you go to the US and Canada, where I see about 10 to 15% people who have what I would call a healthy and diverse gut microbiome. So, it's back to that's the kind of three things I see.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think a lot of it too is what they're not doing, not necessarily not doing, but don't have in their society that kill their mitochondria. Like you said, antibiotics, there's so much, pollution in the air based on where you're at in the United States. There's so many silent killers, I guess you could say, as opposed to places that are, in Japan or out in Tuscany, Italy. And it's just, I think it's the pace of life and the less, you probably know more on the science of this, of course. I do want to make sure that we hit on the exercise. I think that is, like I always tell people, if you could have a pill that would give you more energy, better sleep, longevity, feel better, more joy, like all of this, would you take it? Everybody says yes. That pill is exercise, obviously. But before we get there, let's go on. What are some silent killers that you see that are killing mitochondria that people might not know about?
Well, the biggest one I see is actually these polymedication kind of a lot of these modern medicines, right? You look at the older population; they're already on. You lose 10% muscle function every 10 years, and they're already on this accelerated trajectory to losing muscle and strength. And then they're taking things like statins. Statins are great drugs for people who have, of course, high cholesterol, etc., but they are very toxic to mitochondria. These are, I put them very high up in the list of mitochondrial toxins. Steroids, another one. Steroids are the mitochondria don't like steroids. So all these modern drugs we are taking for inflammation and we have been exposed to them. A lot of the aging population is taking them regularly. That's the number one. The second is probably our diets, the processed foods, not fasting, overeating. Probably, I think it's probably after exercise, the effect of fasting on mitochondria is the most remarkable. Just one, and there have been studies done with fasting just 16 hours or doing these sort of, regularly the 16-8 or 18-6 kind of fasting cycles that people now talk about in intermittent fasting. So a lot of times just being metabolically stressed with overeating. So a lot of the overweight obesity crisis happening around the world, that is the other stressor. Mitochondria just don't have time to refuel and clean out the waste.
Yeah. Do you think so? When you talked about cholesterol, I think that's a hot button topic that people think like, oh, if your cholesterol is high, you're in line for a heart attack and your arteries are clogged. Isn't there a lot of science that says those numbers are completely, put into a certain number by hospitals and, pharma companies that are trying to sell these statins? Is that?
I mean, to a certain extent, these have probably saved a lot of lives in extreme cases where, so cholesterol is not the killer; it's the rupture of these plaques, right, that causes the heart attack, and it's the propensity, it's the risk of the rupture of these plaques that people find. So I think cholesterol is just a bystander kind of an effect where people go and look in these plaques, they find a lot of cholesterol and triglycerides, and they say, hey, these are the bad guys. Let's try to lower them. And now I think they can reduce those plaque size, but I think the modern status that have been, and I'm seeing the same parallels now with this GLP-1 craze also, that people are kind of overtaking it. Healthy people are taking it. I mean, listen, these are kind of pushed by the medical community to the folks. So you're touching the right chord there.
Yeah. Whenever there's a lot of money, billions of dollars being made on something that people are just forcing on to people who are relatively healthy or don't really actually need it, you always have to raise an eyebrow on that. So yeah, you're totally right. Let me ask you about exercise. You've talked about it multiple times. What are some of the best workouts or best exercises that we can do to boost mitochondria?
I think any exercise is good for mitochondria. I want to make that. Now, is aerobic better than resistance versus high interval intensity training? There are studies, and I think depending on which exercise research camp you are, nobody can ever agree. But I have done studies where bringing 80-year-olds with sarcopenia, which is really a muscle wasting condition linked to aging, you bring them, you give them 20 to 30 minutes of just an aerobic, or a yoga kind of an exercise regularly, and you see the impact on mitochondria, you see the impact on muscle energetics. And that's what people, a lot of clinicians don't think about. They think about that, oh, let's take high protein, or let's take this anabolic boost muscle mass, but it's really the energy, it's really the effect there. And so exercise, to me, any form of exercise done regularly is the biggest mitochondrial booster you'll ever find. Problem is compliance. In every trial we do, in 40-year-olds to 60-year-olds, or the 60 to 90-year-olds, compliance is less than 60%. You tell them show up 3 times in a week in a 6-month trial, people don't show up, and so that's the challenge. Is really the compliance. Now, we have also looked at Olympian level athletes. Is probably that exercise is probably, these folks will have the highest physical performance, they have the highest muscle performance. The idea is that then they should have the highest mitochondrial performance, and to a certain extent, it's true. But even in the athletic community, overtraining impairs mitochondria. And so, again, you have to balance it out. A lot of athletes push it too much, and you can see a lot of top athletes in their season, they will get injured. They will take longer to recover. A lot of the NBA folks you were talking about, they're playing like 3 to 5 games a week. It's this overtraining impact. So I think exercise plus, thinking about your diet plus the nutritional strategies that we talked about is the best way. But any form of exercise is good. So I'll leave it at that.
I think the best line ever is compliance is the issue.
Same with fasting, same with intermittent fasting, and same with caloric restriction. But that's where nutrition comes in.
Wouldn't it be great if there was just something you had that would just tell you, okay, here's your optimal level of training for the day. Don't go past it and don't stay underneath it. Like, someone's got to be able to create a product like that, right?
I think we are coming there. I think with all these things too, like the wearables and the smart, we are all now who are aware and into this digital health. We are tracking how many steps we are taking, and there's even debate. Oh, is it 6,000 steps? Is it 8,000 steps? Is it 10,000 steps? Hey, 6,000. If you can do it, it's great. If you can do more, it's probably not overtraining, right? So that's where I think, as a society, as a group of researchers, we need to agree.
Yeah, I wonder. Maybe we jump in and start a company on that, Dr. Singh. All right. So talk to me on, I think this, supplementation we talked about earlier, but Mitopure in general. And I hadn't heard of this before. I know this is what you guys are doing at Timeline Nutrition. That's pretty revolutionary. So it's almost taking mitochondria and taking it to another level of longevity, increased strength, increased endurance, and energy. Is that saying that correctly?
Yeah, so, the whole idea, and this is 15 years in the making, this whole idea, and doing really the hard yards in research and clinical science, is that we wanted to take what we call the biotech approach to cracking nutrition, right? And by that, I mean really starting with all the fruits and nuts that are given the superfruit status, and deconstructing them. So we started looking at nuts, berries, and pomegranates. And when you look at a pomegranate, it has 4,000 active compounds inside it. There's really 4,000 bioactive molecules inside it. You put them through a library and you ask the question, what is the effect on lifespan or mitochondria? And so we really started at that level, at the smallest species. So most of these discoveries, the first discoveries, resveratrol was discovered. Similarly, NAD boosters were discovered. They start in fruit flies and worms, because it's easy to study worms and fruit flies because they live so short. You can actually look at, what is the impact in the diet of these molecules on their lifespan. So we were looking at all these 4,000 compounds, and only one struck us, which we didn't bet on initially, and we were working with one of the top mitochondrial researchers who has actually discovered a lot of these compounds like resveratrol and NAD boosters. And he came running to us about 10 years back and said, hey, what is this molecule? Because none of the other molecules, so-called polyphenols and antioxidants that are present in the pomegranate, they're doing the job, but this one is. And so we got interested in this molecule, and it's a molecule called urolithin A. Okay. Now, when you're eating a bowl of nuts or berries or drinking a glass of pure pomegranate juice, you're consuming precursors of this molecule, which are called polyphenols or L-argitannins. As we digest them, the gut microbiome breaks them down into simpler molecules inside the gut, and these are called postbiotics. And for long, it was thought that these urolithins or urolithin A is just a byproduct. It's a waste product that just, the body is using to simplify. What Professor Albrights, who we were working with, found was that actually it was this gut metabolite that was having these remarkable effects on lifespan. So he saw about a 45% improvement in lifespan, which at that time, when you compare, was very similar to caloric restriction by about 20%. So we got interested in urolithin A, and we started giving it in older species, older rodents, and we started seeing that these older rodents were running about 40% longer and had 10% better grip strength. You make them hold the wire and they collapse the wire. And so then we went for another 10 years doing multiple randomized clinical trials in different populations, and we see the translation of how this molecule works, that it clears up the faulty mitochondria through this process we call mitophagy. It boosts cellular mitochondrial health. It then allows for creation of newer healthy mitochondria. And in 2 to 4 months, we start seeing in healthy populations without changing diet or physical activity levels, and about a 10 to 12% increase in strength, and about, as you said at the start, about a 15 to 17% increase in endurance.
Wow, fascinating. So can you tell us more about, what you guys are doing at Timeline Nutrition as we wrap up here? Why we should be excited about it. Why, I know there's a lot of groundbreaking research that you guys are doing, and you're getting it out there to the general public to be able to use enhanced mitochondria, exactly what you just nailed right there where you're talking about. Tell us a little bit more about Timeline Nutrition and how we can all, learn more about it and check it all out.
Yeah, so what we have done is we have created a very carefully calibrated nutritional supplement that contains the exact doses of urolithin A or Mitopure that are clinically backed. So we know from multiple randomized clinical trials that this is the right dose that boosts your mitochondrial health and results in benefits such as improved muscle function, strength, endurance, and we even see that it acts on inflammation and lowers body's inflammation. So that's, if people want to learn more, they can go to www.timeline.com. We are doing multiple studies always. We have even developed a test now that is, if people, your audience wants to try it out, I've developed a new test which can tell you actually if you are a natural producer of this molecule, if you're eating right, you're going to make it. And a lot of people, we see about 70% don't make it. So then you can decide whether you want to supplement, and if you're making low levels, you can supplement a little lower. So yeah, this is where all the cutting edge stuff we're doing here.
Oh man, what's that website? Can you say it again? Is it Timeline?
Timeline.com, yes.
Timeline.com. There it is. That's I'm going to check that out.
Sure, yeah.
I'm going to see what, if I'm producing it. I want to know.
Yeah, and follow our latest research. We are now trying to see how mitochondria are important for immune health, for skin health, and so we are coming up all the time with, really cutting edge products that are disrupting both nutrition and even the skincare field.
Man, it's really good. Dr. Singh, that's all I got for you. That was, gosh, you're fascinating, man.
Well, thanks for having me, Dave.
Yeah, I think we all just, go out and charge up our mitochondria. Maybe come to Switzerland, maybe eat the chocolate, drink the wine. It all comes back to drinking the wine for mitochondria. I'm just kidding.
Yes.
Thanks, Dr. Singh.
Sure. Pleasure.
Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you enjoyed this episode, there's plenty more where it came from. You can go find another episode just like it right here. Come on. You can click it. You know you want to.